Good afternoon, everybody. We're just waiting for a few more people to join us. While we're doing that, just a little bit of housekeeping. I think at the bottom of your screens, you'll have a little Q&A button. If you want to leave any questions, please put them in there. I can't see them as we go along, but we'll have a little bit of session at the end. And then hopefully the powers that are managing everything behind the scenes will be able to put them up on the screen for me, so I can see them as we go along. So this is our 6-month update on the R&D scheme. I think many of you have joined us before, but just in case there's some people here that are new to us, we're from MPA. We specialise in helping innovation businesses. R&D is a really big part of that. I'm joined today by Sean Ennis, our head of R&D.
Good afternoon. She said, those who know me would know I've worked for quite a few claims with you in the past. Those that don't, I oversee the R&D process. That includes any patent box, claims, compliance, and general R&D submissions.
Excellent. So Sean's going to take us through some stuff. I'm here to just ask questions. I'm Sam Wildman. I'm a director here at MPA, and again, I've worked with a lot of you over the years on R&D and some of our other services. I'm also in charge of moving the screens along, so bear with me. We have 30 minutes. We'll try and wrap up in about 20 and then leave time for questions as well. Here we go. No, that didn't work. All right, excellent. I'm going to say what's changed.
Not
much.
Not much, which is probably what the first time in however many years we've been working together, which is a real positive. We know that the scheme's now consistent. The merged scheme, as of the HMRC update 2 weeks ago at their webinar, is going to remain in place, which is good. It means there's more security for those that are operating in the scheme, less ambiguity. And as a business like ours, it's much easier to plan ahead, which is good.
So most of our clients now should have all gone now onto the merged scheme.
Yeah, there's a few left, but pretty much everyone's onto the merged scheme in a minute.
And the headlines of the merged scheme is that on average you get about 15% of your qualifying expenditure back.
Yeah.
Can't include overseas costs.
Can't exclude overseas costs. HMRC did address that last week. Even those companies that are in group structures, could there be like a loophole there where they could include it, but they still said no, so that's a definite no, and that will remain going forward. We mentioned about being put under the merged scheme, which is essentially the old RDEC scheme, is that the R&D claim is the taxable income in the P&L, which is great for the business, make it more profitable. And what's different to the SME scheme is if you're loss making, you can still have a payable cash credit.
So we used to have many clients that all of a sudden started making a profit, great, had loads of preserved losses, and then the R&D didn't actually give you any in-year value.
Yeah, correct, which is really good now, because there's a number of companies we're working with actually now again seeing the benefit of the R&D scheme now they've moved into the merged scheme.
Great. So how's all these changes going? I know you've mentioned that HMRC had an update last week, the week before. What are the key things from that update?
Key things is that the claim volume has reduced year on year by about 10,000. So it's 51,000 claims in 24 to 25. But the value's gone up from 6.6 billion to 7.2. So it's a big increase in terms of value. So we know it's still very worthwhile for companies to continue claiming. We personally have seen that the claim value has fluctuated somewhat with some companies purely because of the overseas restrictions as well. So that unfortunately is going to remain, and companies will continue to be impacted by that. They touch on a number of other areas in there. Compliance is going to be shifted. They're going to look at more complex cases, mainly group structures. They're looking to team up with their I&R department, but they haven't given any more information on that.
What's I&R?
It's more in corporate inquiries
Right.
they're going to focus on. So we'll see what comes out of that. The inquiry process for us has changed somewhat, which I'm sure we can touch on in a minute, and we expect that to change again going forwards. They mentioned that they, like everyone else, they're using AI.
Yeah.
Which was very noble of them to say that. And if you ever experience or come across any responses or correspondence which is quite clearly come out of AI software, then raise a complaint, because that is not how they want to be operating. They do want human intervention, and everything should be verified by a human before it's sent out.
So AI is just a tool, really, to, I suppose, to help them pick things out.
Yeah.
Look at some of their responses, but it shouldn't be an AI generated response back.
No, they look like many companies looking to drive efficiencies, and as we've seen with the inquiry process, that their times have drastically sped up in some cases as well. They touched on in inquiries in general that they're looking to meet face to face via Teams or Zoom. As often as possible with companies as well. They're seeing there's far more benefit in that, and companies are taking far more comfort from actually having a human correspondence, as opposed to 12 to 18 months ago. That was a big no-no.
Yeah. I mean, I know they weren't using AI back then, but it just did feel like a production line.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I think people lost a lot of faith at that point in time.
They're also blowing their own trumpet, saying that they're actually dealing with claims a lot quicker. Like 9 out of 10 of them are getting processed on time.
Yeah, so
I think we're seeing that, to be honest.
Yeah, they are, and we are seeing that, and there's definitely been a shift with HMRC positively as well. So yeah, their statistics are their statistics, but we are seeing firsthand a much more coherent and smoother process for us and the clients we work with.
And they're also taking some of the feedback on board. I think they've made some changes, haven't they, to the forms?
Yeah, they're looking to introduce a section for competent professional information overview. And anyone who's been through an inquiry knows that it's included in every correspondence that comes out. It's fundamental to them actually being an R&D project, yet they don't ask that information on the form. A lot of companies like ourselves include it in any section at the minute, but if they're looking to make that a specific section, it must be covered off for every submission.
And I suppose the one other part was where it's linked to R&D, but it's not purely R&D, is around tax registration.
Yeah, so we're okay, but if you're new to this, you need to register with HMRC to be able to submit R&D claims on other companies' behalf.
So the whole thing that if you're doing any tax work, it's not now down to the individual tax person to be liable for the work, it's down to the company. So the business is, anybody who's doing tax, the business has to be registered now as doing tax, and there's obviously obligations there to the directors of the business around that work. Great. If we go on to the next slide. One of the things that we see in here from speaking to HMRC is the changes in the tone of what they're saying.
Yeah, their correspondence is probably more softer in how they come across. It's more joined up with information that's been provided to them in the past, and it definitely feels like it's more of a thorough process that you're getting out of HMRC, as opposed to a conveyor belt type approach where they're looking to clearly demonstrate that they were getting to grips with the R&D scheme.
And when they're talking about technology now as well, their terminology seems to be changing from competent professional, not technical uncertainty, to advancement. Yeah,
they're focusing heavily on the field in which you're looking to advance, whether that be science or technology, and they're looking to see that that is trickled throughout the project, that there's a clear link between each section that we're answering as part of the AIF, but it's clear that the competent professionals are very knowledgeable about the field, and they can clearly distinct the field that they're focusing on, what the existing knowledge was, what they're trying to advance, and what the specific uncertainty is with those that advance they're trying to make.
And they're wanting that sort of benchmarked through the whole claim.
Yeah, you should be able to really just always revert back to the first question, and you should be able to see a direct line all the way through, kind of, and it makes it easier. And the fewer questions they have to ask or Google, the better, easier it will be, and the smoother the process will be for everyone involved.
So working with clients now, do you tend to see that clients think they qualify but maybe struggle to prove it with this new benchmarking?
Yes and no. Some, as we've always experienced, look at their work in isolation as opposed to what's broader out there. Yeah, they may have some independent piece of technology or a material that they're trying to develop, but don't always take into consideration the wider market or the wider field. So that is always a player. But generally speaking, we had a call prior to this one, this meeting now, where we spoke to 3 people I've never spoken to before, all competent, all knew exactly what information was after. It's really getting in front, a lot of the time, getting in front of the right people to just pull that information out, people that are actually really undertaking the work.
Now, not a question that I said I was going to ask you, but what is a competent professional?
Well, there's no clear definition according to HMRC, which is always great. There's a grey area, but it's someone who's very knowledgeable within the industry they're working with. They can either be with qualifications or industry experience, or both.
I think that's quite important, because I think it was branded around quite a while ago that you had to be down to your qualification. But if you've done 25 years working in a certain field and a certain material, doing a certain thing, it doesn't really matter what qualification you had 30 years prior to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you see a strong, competent professional bio, or which is most companies we work with, and as soon as they provide that, you think, there's no questions going to be asked about that. You can see they've got relevant experience. You see they've got a keen interest in it as well. And quite often they do have the relevant qualifications, but it's not one size fits all with that.
Brilliant. All right, if we can go to the next. Oh, I did work that time. I'm getting better at this. So I'm going to ask a question that's on the slide. What's the difference between a strong and a weak claim?
Strong claim has everything involved and intact. So that's not just a technical narrative, it's a supporting evidence for that claim as well. We have seen, we're in compliance inquiries, that HMRC can resolve an inquiry within 2 rounds of questions if all the information that they requested is provided to them and there's no gaps in that. That's a strong claim. And it goes to invoicing, contracts, rationale and apportionments, and maybe a timeline of events if they've asked for that, when the project, what specific tasks did you undertake within the claim period. That's a strong project. Where there's gaps and maybe assumptions made that when the claim is put together, or when costs have been put together, or there's gaps in invoicing specifically, HMRC will then really go for that. And we found that when companies provide information to us, if we see a clear breakdown of everything itemised, you know that they've tracked it, you know they have that information to hand, and it's very easy to pull back. When you see various suppliers or consumed materials, as it were, it seems more assumptions are made as opposed to actual clear evidence that they can present back.
So on consumer materials and things like that, it's not being able to say, well, we have 5 projects going on, let's divide that out to run the 5. You've got to be able to clearly show at what points in the journey each material was being used and in what projects.
Yeah, absolutely. There's clearly times where a company could make a large purchase, and a portion of that cost could be attributed to the project, and that's absolutely fine, but it has to be strong rationale. If it's every cost that's been included, then that's the type of logic that's trying to be applied. We won't want to progress with that. HMRC will just tear that apart. So that's what makes the difference between strong and a weak claim.
And where are you seeing most issues coming from now? Is it the technical side or the financial side?
At the minute, with any inquiries that are lingering, it's financial. We are answering the technical questions relatively quick, within 1 to 2 rounds. Occasionally there could be, we don't quite understand what was provided previously, can you just repurpose that? But where there's gaps in evidence of costs across the board, that's when HMRC really start to drill into it. That's what we're seeing. And companies that come to us as well, where they had poor experiences with HMRC, when you actually start speaking to them, it's quite clear there's gaps in what evidence they're presenting to HMRC, or they've misunderstood the brief.
So if you were walking into a client today, what would be the early warning signs that claim might struggle?
If you're not keeping any evidence or records throughout the financial year that you're in. Now, some companies, a lot of companies we're working with at the minute, business priorities are key. You're looking at generating revenue, you're looking at servicing clients. I get that throughout the year, your priorities shift, and when it comes to a year end, you talk then retrospectively, you think about the R&D claim. But even if at a monthly meeting you could track some of the notes on the work you've undertaken, if what level of cost could be attributed to a project, or the number of projects, or the people, at least you have some records that you can go back to throughout the year, and it makes it much easier. And even if that's put in an email, that is still evidence that HMRC asks for. It doesn't have to be like a big project plan that they're asking for. Emails are perfectly sufficient as well.
And what about, we don't have many these days, but what about people that actually leave the claim process to the 2-year deadline?
Very tricky. It's much more tricky with that. The amount of information that HMRC require hasn't changed really. It's just being specifically answering the questions that are on the AIF form. And if you're trying to recall information from 2 years ago, it's very difficult to be thorough, and more likely to be required by HMRC as well. We know they've introduced a notification form which has to be submitted within 6 months of the year end. HMRC want everything to be done as close to real time year end as possible. Leaving it 2 years past the year end just increases risks and reduces quality.
I suppose it makes it much harder to benchmark as well, because you've then got to remember what was the benchmark 2 years prior to where you are now.
And HMRC aren't industry professionals, not competent professionals in the field. If they receive a report 2 years past the event, they are looking for what work would have undertaken 2 years ago. They're not going to be able to line everything up. They're going to start picking files. Well, actually, we can see today that you can do X, Y, and Z. But that wasn't true 2 years ago. So think about the process that they're going through. They're trying to educate themselves in some instances when they're reading these reports. So the more close to the year end we can submit this information, the better it is for them and the client.
Now, you mentioned advanced notification. I just want to go back on this. It's been around for a while. We still speak to clients constantly, not clients, but maybe new businesses who weren't aware. Can you just take us through the advanced notification?
In a nutshell, if you are thinking of submitting an R&D claim, and even if you do not submit an R&D claim, you could miss that opportunity if you're not pre-notified. And that has to be done within 6 months of your year end. And that doesn't matter if you've got a shortened period or an extended period.
And what goes into pre-notification?
Company name, UTR, the claim period dates, main point of contact, and then an overview of the R&D that you are either looking to undertake or you have undertaken in that year. But what you put on that form doesn't necessarily have to be the projects that you claim for.
Okay, should have asked you this question at the beginning, and I forgot. That's why we're live. I love this, but it can go between a bit into here. There are some things in a claim where you may not know if HMRC will accept them. Like, can I use these overseas costs? Can I use these subcontractors? Does this qualify? Now, HMRC are just about to launch their advanced assurance. We've got advanced notification. Now we've got advanced assurance.
Yeah.
What is that?
They're going to pilot that in May on areas where they believe it's less likely to see R&D for tax purposes.
Right.
I haven't said what specific areas they would be yet, and companies like us can opt in to go on the pilot and trial that process where we can provide information such as the advanced notification, but more in depth than that, to HMRC. They can review what the project scope is, and try and answer some of the questions that we'd have to address by the AIF, the main field, the science and technology, the benchmarking and the advance, and they can come back with any questions. And the idea here is to prevent companies submitting claims, receiving the tax benefit and having to pay it back. What we don't know is how smooth the process is going to be and how long it will take.
So when we spoke about this before, it was possibly that they could look at this in industry sectors where they believe that there maybe isn't much R&D. So there's certain areas in black construction and areas like that. But it also allows people maybe something to do something very niche and they do believe that their overseas costs could be.
Yeah.
You can go and get that part of it approved. Yeah. They still got to go through the same claim process and everything else will go through the same levels of scrutiny.
Yeah. Just
because you've got the advanced assurance doesn't mean that you've got a rubber stamp and that your claim's going to not get looked at. No,
it just means that you're basically ticking the boxes and there's less gaps that they're going to try and put the pick on later in the day. Yeah, they're trying to prevent as many inquiries as possible. That's the idea with this. But,
yeah, and I think from what they've said as well is that if they've got all the information up front, yeah, they don't have to then dig for further information and it makes the claims process, yeah, a lot quicker, yeah, and the right people are getting paid out at the right time. Right, you may have covered some of this, but from what you've seen working for HMRC, what would make HMRC want to look closer at a claim?
Duration. Past the year end, the longer you leave the claim to be submitted, the likely they are to look at it. They said they're looking to shift their focus on compliance to more structured and complex cases. What that means, we don't know. They mentioned they're looking maybe at larger groups where they're submitting R&D claims, so that could mean that they could be looking at raising inquiries there. That might not necessarily be triggered by the R&D specifically itself, it could be other areas, but it's going to try and do a bit of an audit. Generally speaking, where there's a lack of information that you're benchmarking the project against as well, and that's really key. So we have a specific field that the project is focused upon, and we need to be able to evidence, but not in providing lots of additional pieces of information, but within narrative in the AIF that we're submitting, how you benchmark what's out there, what knowledge already exists, and why that's not suitable, what its limitations are.
And I suppose one thing we've talked about overseas costs, but I suppose with the larger companies, that also the fact that they could be subcontracting to each other, because subcontracted R&D is still an issue.
Yeah, they're definitely looking at that, and that's why they're also introduced the PAYE references as well. So they're looking to who's claiming, is there any overlap, companies double claiming as well. So the fact that they've already introduced the PAYE references or the company registration numbers, they're really trying to piece together that companies aren't trying to submit the same claims.
Because we always go off topic, you've most probably done some of this already, sorry, I get too excited. What are you seeing in real case situations at the moment? Either where people are struggling or what's looking good, what people have learnt?
What we're seeing, where companies are struggling is evidencing still. That seems to be the slowest piece of information. But obtaining technical information has always been the more straightforward part of the process. It's refined over the last few years. HMRC have changed the level of information, the depth of information thereafter. But when you speak to the competent professionals doing the work, obtaining that information is fairly straightforward. The gaps are the supporting evidence for that claim, and that is thorough records, if required, apportionments. They're really the tough ones where companies look at it retrospective and they haven't got processes involved. I know there's some people on here that I work with on their claims or reviewed their claims and they're tracking against a project. You can just see the information come over and it's so clean and easy to work with. If HMRC to ask, yeah, take a bit of time putting it together, they know exactly what they need to pull together and it's much clearer and smoother for them specifically.
I think that sort of looks at, I was going to ask you if you know, halfway through the year, you started to speak to a business and ask them what they should start to do immediately to prepare for the next claim. I think it's the tracking, isn't it?
Yeah, tracking, keep records. As much information you can go back on, the better.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we've got a bit of a timeline of what a claim looks like and goes through. Where do businesses mainly fall off this timeline?
It's really the capture. It's really not tracking again. It's that piece. It's that starting as early as possible, collating information throughout the financial year, and then just piecing that all back together. That's where companies are struggling. Those that maybe looking at this quarterly or monthly, it becomes much easier to go back for them to go back and piece all that information together. That's really the thing probably that I'm trying to get across. Is get everything aligned, keep records, and then break them out by project. It becomes much easier in the long run.
You keep records of what you're benching
Yeah,
the advancement against, not just in your own business, but industry
absolutely
as a whole. Right, I'm going to try and wrap this up now, so hopefully we might have some questions. So we've seen that the value of R&D to business has gone down. In the heyday, loss-making business could get 33%.
Yeah.
Now it averages out around 15%-ish. Is it still worthwhile doing?
Absolutely. You see that the volume of claims has gone down, but the value's going up. So companies that are undertaking R&D is still recouping a lot of money back, taxable benefit to them, and money they can reinvest into their company. And the fact that now the scope of what HMRC are after is defined and not changing, they say at the minute, not for the foreseeable. It's a much clearer process, less ambiguity. It's still really worth it for companies.
I think the last 2 years have been a headache.
Yeah.
I think we discuss this every time with all the multiple schemes in place, and we talk about now there's just the merged scheme, but there's also the R&D intensive scheme as well for those people who've got a certain level of R&D versus turnover, a slightly higher amount that you can get back. I know when I go out and speak to clients how their businesses are growing or being able to survive in turbulent times, and how people still just keep wanting to innovate.
Yeah.
So it is really good. Right, so I think we've nearly up at time. I'm going to have to ask my people behind the scenes if there are any questions. We'll try and get around to them all. There's a Q&A there.
Okay.
So the question is, if somebody has a client who is developing a product with another company, who makes the claim? Is it a joint claim or separate?
That's going to come down to commercials and whose project it actually is. So the HMRC, February last year, changed their subsidised subcontracting rule in line with what companies like us always said it should be. It's whoever's undertaking the R&D, who's overseeing the project, is knowledgeable that it's research and development, generally can claim. There's always going to be scenarios where companies know what the work they're outsourcing is R&D. They just don't have the skill set to do it, and they're asking other companies to do it on their behalf. So you really have to think about the contractual agreements that are in place, because HMRC would want to see that. In this instance, where it's a dual venture, if both of them are going to own some IP at the end of it, there's definitely a possibility that they can look to claim their own pieces of work and their own specific costs.
But you couldn't say, well, you've done that bit for me, so I'm going to claim for that bit, but you're also going to claim for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But if we've done a piece of work and I've done a piece of work, I can claim for it. If you've individually done a piece of work, you can claim for it. The question is going to be when those two pieces of work come together, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what you can look at from a terms perspective.
Yeah.
And like anything, one thing doesn't fit all, so it's always good to check. it's just multiple input to I think that's what, I think we've answered that then. If you're both doing individual parts, I mean, it's like making a car, isn't it? There are many people out there building certain bits for the car. Their own bits are R&D.
Yeah.
And then if you then sell that product on or do whatever, but look at the terms of contract. If you've got any more questions and you haven't been able to put them on here, then please get in contact with me. I'm not sure if the other slide will come back up now, but I'm really easy to get hold of. I'm Samantha.Wildman, my full name, like I've been naughty, at mpa.co.uk, and it will just be in the chat now. I can do these things, it's the power of mind. If you need to get in contact and ask any questions, and I can forward it on to Sean or anybody else in his team. But I hope you found it useful. I know not much hasn't changed, but it is still really, really important to keep up on it. I still speak to clients and they say, I hadn't realised that's changed. And we do these regularly, so it is good that you've kept yourselves up to date, and let us know if you've got any questions. And thank you all. Sean, thank you.
Thank you.